Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me be silent just for a second. Listen to this. I love some praise music. I love praise music. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am Portia Wheatley. I am the founder and president of a nonprofit organization acknowledged as Trophy of Life Incorporated. We have the great pleasure of rendering hope and encouragement to our audience, and we are so glad that He has entrusted that into our hands. And so we're just saying, thank you, Lord, for the opportunity. Well, welcome to the platform of Project 365, where we bring to this platform many messages of hope, encouragement, and inspiration. That is our assignment, and that is what we have committed ourselves to deliver, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do so. We bring many other voices, many testimonials, many means of inspiration. It's just a lot to bring forth in 365 days, which involves hope, encouragement, and inspiration. And we're grateful to be here. Let's welcome our co-host.
Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. My name is Keah Swan, and I am so happy to be here.
So happy to be here. And we will welcome our guests momentarily. But before we do, we want you to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe so that you will be a part of Project 365 by spreading the word of hope, encouragement, and inspiration around the world. And that is our duty. Remember, that's our duty to do that. For it, I don't even mind if our segments reach just one person, but I know it's reaching hundreds of people. Now let's take that farther. Our big God, He does big things. So we're reaching thousands of people, but you will help us do that by subscribing to our YouTube channel. All right. Well, today we have the great pleasure of introducing to some and presenting to others. Her name is Keah Mason. And I say, this is a friend of a friend. Many times we meet individuals and we may not know them personally. However, through the friend that they introduced us to, or the friend that we know that told us about them, we trust their judgment. And that is the way it is today. I've just met Keah maybe about maybe a month or two ago, or something like that. And she had a wonderful story and testimony to share about her life experience with loneliness. And I know somewhere along the line, you and I and our audience have somewhere in our lives experienced loneliness and what it can do. And we want to hear more about it from someone who's experienced it, not just the head knowledge, but someone who experienced it and how they came up out of and walked into something greater. I say a higher place, because loneliness can take you to a low place. It can cause you not to embrace, and it can cause you to embrace what should not be in your life. So today we're going to hear from this woman with this experience in the person of Keah Mason. Thank you again for accepting our invitation to come, Keah. This is your platform.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate being able to be here, and I'm grateful for the connection. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in and listening with us. And again, I'm just so excited for the connection. So again, my name is Keah Mason. I am an educator of 11 years in a public school system in the state of Maryland. And just recently, now I can add to my resume an author as well. So I'm excited to share a little bit about my journey with you all today. Back in 2017, at the end of 2017, I had the privilege of working with a close friend and mentor of mine. She has an organization called Real Women Rock, and our founder is Dr. Trinace Richardson. And our goal with Real Women Rock is to create safe space for all women to do real work on themselves, real personal development, authentic work on themselves. And every month, we actually hold a live sister circle in various areas. And every year we have an intensive, which is kind of like a conference, if you will, conference/retreat. And back in 2017, she asked me to facilitate a session. And I wasn't a facilitator at that time. I was just an attendee of Real Women and just a member of the Real Women community. But when she asked me to facilitate, she assigned me the topic of loneliness. Our theme for that particular intensive was Real Women on the Journey. And so we were talking about just various aspects of our everyday lives, of our journey. And she asked me to talk specifically about loneliness because her being a close friend of mine for almost 15 years or more, she just knew that that was something I was passionate about and something that I was comfortable about. And so there I was, all of a sudden, a facilitator, just kind of overnight, talking about loneliness and just the connection I was able to make with other women in terms of just standing up and having a conversation, because it really was me sharing my experience, but it really just evolved into a conversation, and every woman was so engaged. And what I love about Real Women is that it's an organization that does not even target a specific group of women, but it's all women. So the diversity in the room in terms of age and relationship status and culture, just has always just been a blessing to me. And to see that we all had in common loneliness, that at some point in life, we're going to face loneliness. Loneliness is going to visit us during different seasons of our lives. But, you know, where we can't control that, we can absolutely control how we respond to it, and just posture our heart to be able to embrace it. And I just was able to share very openly about how I was wrestling with loneliness in some ways that were not healthy and ways that weren't beneficial. And I wasn't growing, and I wasn't really living as the woman God created me to be, because loneliness for me, I associated it with very negative things. I'm single and I don't have any children. I'm in my late 30s. So, you know, that timeline is in my mind, and that biological clock. And that's, you know, sometimes as women, that's what we do. But loneliness for me, I associated it with, I'm not good enough. I must not be pretty enough. Gone to school, obviously, have my degree, I'm in my career, I have a home. So I'm like, well, what else could it be? You know, other than I must not be good enough. And so those were the lies that I fed myself. And standing up in front of a group of women, and they're able to say, me too, or I felt that way too, or I struggle with that too. And not only because of singleness, you know, maybe you're an empty nester, maybe you're divorced, or maybe you are retired, just different things. We go through those different seasons in our lives, and for everyone to be able to resonate with that topic and openly share that hour of presenting and having that conversation at that intensive, I was like, I'm not done. There was so much more about loneliness that I wanted to dive into. I wanted to share how loneliness had affected me and my life in some ways that weren't the best, and choices that I made as a result of feeling that way. But on the flip side, I also wanted to share what it could lead us to, because loneliness is either going to lead you down a dark path of unhealthy choices, but it also has the potential to lead you into healing and revelation and self-discovery. And so I had the idea out of nowhere, because I was not a writer. I'm a school teacher by profession. So where I got the idea to write from, that was another surprise to me as well. But I just felt like, you know, this is my life and I'm familiar with this. And sometimes God gives you things that may feel like a burden to you, but maybe that's the very thing that he's going to use for you to encourage and help someone else. So I just felt inspired. I wasn't sure, and I went through all types of, you know, insecurities, and I'm not sure, and who am I? Who's going to listen to me? Or who, you know, all of those things that we end up putting ourselves through. But I just felt like there's no way that I have experienced all of this, and I'm not supposed to share my testimony. And I don't come as someone that knows it all, or an expert, or someone that has overcome loneliness, or someone who is unlonely now, because that's not the case. But I'm just here wanting to connect with other women, because I know that we can all relate to it. And I think that we are able to not only grow ourselves when we unpack our experiences and go along the journey of discovering what it is that we need to do different in order to feel different. Now, I'm not saying be different in terms of let me just be unlonely, like let me hurry up and get married and that fixes it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just entering into a space where we are content regardless of our circumstance, and we have a peace regardless of, you know, what we have, and not focused on what we lack, but rather we're able to just be our authentic selves, realizing that, you know, we are enough. And sometimes I just believe the very company that we're longing for is our own company. It's within us. So I'm just very passionate about sharing that. So long story short, 3 years ago, the idea of writing a book about loneliness came to me. I shared the idea with a publisher and she was on board. And 3 years later, here I am. The book, When Loneliness Visits, is going to be released next week. It can be pre-ordered now, but that was a 3-year journey. So the idea was there from the beginning, but I did not know or expect that writing process was going to be what it was, because while you are trying to do something and you're going through something, you are growing and changing and evolving. And here I am trying to write a story. I didn't know my story was going to still be written in that 3 years. So here I am.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Let me ask you this now. In that time of your loneliness, did you encounter any toxic relationships? Tell
I
us a little
did.
bit about that.
Absolutely, I did. So there is actually a chapter in the book called Toxic Relationships, because that's one of the things for me personally that loneliness led me to toxic relationships. Because for me, loneliness is a hardship. It's an affliction in my life. And so in order to cope with that, for me, I turned to toxic relationships. I wanted to feel unlonely. I wanted the company and companionship of others. And so that led me to latch on to things that I had no business latching on to. And so it's not a one and done for me. I can't say that it's perfected. But when you are lonely and you're not coping or really dealing with it and really getting to the truth and the root of, you know, how you feel in a healthy way, you're latching on to unhealthy things. So toxic relationships, not only with people, toxic relationships with food, toxic relationship with spending habits. Those are all things that I talk about in the book.
That is good. That is good because they are unhealthy relationships. Shopping, all of that shopping and all of that. So that's amazing. Now, what was your darkest hour? Because there are a lot of single ladies, there are a lot of single men, and many times they do latch on to unhealthy relationships, but it's not necessary. So what was your lowest point?
So for me, loneliness is a lot rooted in not necessarily the lack of company and companionship of others, but it's rooted in, for me, self-esteem and insecurity. And what I didn't realize was that all of that was going to resurface in my life in writing the book as well. So when you say, well, what was your darkest hour? So of course, at this age, yeah, I want to be married and I want to have kids because that's what we're supposed to be doing by now in my mind. And so when you don't have that, of course you long for that. And you're like, well, what's wrong with me? And why isn't somebody pick me? So what I was doing is going through the comparison and the God, why me? And I'm a Christian and I've always been a Christian. So it was like a tug of war with my relationship with God, because it's like, well, God, you love me. And I'm supposed to believe I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'm supposed to believe in your love for me and trust in your love for me. But why haven't you answered my prayers? Why do I feel this way? Why isn't anyone picking me? So not only was I always dealing with that and struggling with that, but in writing the book, I didn't you think you just want to sit down and write a book. Not when you're working with a publisher and an editor, because they gonna have some things to say, because their job is to produce the best product that is going to allow you to tell your story as well as have your voice be heard, but to connect with other readers as well, and to make sure that you're meeting your objective. You know, we think we just going to dump all of our stuff, and it has to be cleaned up. It has to be presented in such a way that is beneficial for everybody. And so I didn't know that was going to feel like an attack. that was going to be yet another thing that says, you're not good enough. You can't write. And did you miss the vision? Did God really tell you to write this book? Because when you're being criticized, that's a blow, you know, to your self-esteem and your ego. When you already kind of struggle with that anyway, am I enough? Am I enough? Then here you go again. And so that 3-year journey for me, when you say, what was your darkest hour? It was learning to believe God's truth. And that truth had to come from me without a relationship and without anything. So it wasn't me like accepting my identity and embracing my identity and really embracing God's love and what he says about me. It didn't come from somebody else's approval or validation. Right. It came from me feeling as lonely and dark as I felt, going to God's feet, crying before him and allowing him to catch my tears and allowing my mind to be transformed to be filtered through his truth and not based on how I felt. That makes sense.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. That is so good. It's so good, especially to the women, to the men, to the widows and widowers. When you really think about it, they're single, but they're single in a different frame of the mind and thought of the mind and mindset. And when they are at a point of feeling so lonely, they marry quickly. Yeah. They marry quickly. So we look forward to purchasing that book. I'm telling you, now you just hit on a few things, and I know there is so much more in that book. So you're kind of like dangling in front of us. So like, get the book.
I know, and I do, if I can, I just do want to emphasize that obviously singleness is very much of my experience, but loneliness is rooted in so many other things. You know, think about the new mother who has young children and all her girlfriends aren't calling her anymore because they feel like you busy with all them kids. You're not going nowhere, so we can't do the things we used to do. You know, so again, you don't imagine that woman to feel lonely because in your mind, oh, she has a husband, she has children, she's busy. But don't you think she would long for friendships? You know, so again, rooted in different things. So I would love women to just have an open mind and think like, don't think, oh, well, I'm married, I'm good, I don't need this book. It's not about just singleness. I have experienced lonely. I have a story in there about kickball, playing on the kickball team. I do that as an extracurricular fun activity. But when you're not as athletic as everybody else, there's that comparison that we do, which again results in negative thoughts and it takes you down that same cycle. And then you feel lonely and you might start to isolate yourself or whatever, because now you've started comparing yourself and you think, oh, well, I'm not good enough to be on this team. I mean, all those different things, you would be so surprised in just the various ways we experience it. So my hope and my prayer just is for every woman to understand loneliness is going to visit you at some point in life. And I think even if loneliness is not your thing, I'm really confident that the book has nuggets that will help you through any affliction, because I think it's all about mindset and how it's not our circumstances that has to change, but just the way that we think about them and looking at that glass as half full as opposed to half empty, which is going to lead us into not only feeling better, but making better decisions for our lives.
That's great. That's great. Takira's going to take us out. Close us out. I tell you again, I thank you for the information you shared. I thank you for accepting the invitation to come, and we're going to help you sell some of those books.
Thank you.
Yes, we are. I am so excited to help support and get the book and read it myself. And I'm encouraging everyone, whether you're single or not, to get the book. So I'm so glad you touched on that last point, because that was going to be a question I asked you. Because a lot of times when single people think of loneliness, we don't really think of people who are in relationships or people who are married and they're not alone, but they're lonely. And that's one of the saddest things to see. Like, oh man, like, you know, from a single person standpoint, like, oh, she has a family, she's married. But what if that person, for whatever reasons, they felt lonely, married quickly, made the wrong choice, and now they're like, they regret it, and they're like, I still feel lonely. So everybody, go get this book so that you can go on your own self journey to unpack and grow, because you don't have to be alone and feel lonely. You could be sleeping right next to the person you're married to and feel like, oh my gosh, I am by myself. And if you were in that situation, it's okay. I'm not saying throw them away. It's okay. But start on that self journey to realize your self-worth. Because like she said, that's really what it's all about. We've all felt a place where we just didn't feel good enough, no matter if you're a man, woman, whatever stage in your life you felt that way. So please go support this book. I am so glad to have you on the broadcast today. And like she said, you gave us a teaser. I know there's so many other things that you could, you know, be saying about this topic, because it is a serious topic, especially in the pandemic. You know, now everyone's feeling alone, because even if you have a significant other or you don't get to see your friends. Like, I miss hugging people. I can't even go visit her and say, hey, you know, it's just, I just wish it was a little different. So everybody support this book. Get on your self journey to self-worth and happiness, because it comes in here, starts in here, and it's going to be okay.
It's definitely going to be okay. Keah, do you have a book there that you can hold up?
I don't have them yet. So they'll be available. They'll be available next week. But if I could share the website, where can
Absolutely.
Thank you. So it can be purchased at purposepublishingcompany.com/Keah Mason. And Keah is spelled Keah. So it can be purchased right on that website, and beginning next week, we will start to ship them out.
Great, great. Now, I've already put my word in to purchase 2 books. So the first 2 single ladies that email me to say, I would love to have Keah's book, email me at info@trophyoflife.org. And the first 2 that I see, those are the first 2 single ladies. You'll get that book. Okay. Well, on that note, we are about to close this segment. We are so excited that we had the opportunity to talk about, what is the name of it? When loneliness visits. Got it. Yeah. Got it. We're excited even before it hits the shelves. So, and we will be a part of that community that will help purchase the book and help get that book across the world. So even now, your book is spoken about in England, in New York, in Florida, in Minnesota, in Tennessee, Pennsylvania. Yeah. We have presence there, and we're happy about it. And I know I'm leaving out of New Jersey. Yeah.
North Carolina.
North Carolina. You're right. So we're just a part. I say we're a team, you know. Yes. Everyone that comes on Project 365, we are a team, because we're taking the message of hope, encouragement, and inspiration around the world. Well, on that note, we shall see you tomorrow. God bless you until we meet again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.